Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second Open Insight session, 1 year with the Iris Monitor. And today's theme is data quality and text mining. We have with us three experts from OpenAir: Ioanna Gripari, Technical Project Manager; Claudio Zori, Lead Data Engineer; and Hari Dimitropoulos, Text Mining Lead and Founders Expert, who will all give a presentation on data quality practices in the Monitor, provide recent updates, and speak about the role of AI and text mining in enhancing Monitor insights. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. During the presentation, please keep your microphone muted and your cameras off. For the Q&A session, please feel free to unmute and participate in the session, and you're also welcome to submit your questions here in the chat. Please note that this session is being recorded and transcribed, and if you wish to participate in the Q&A but prefer not to be included in the recording, please let us know here in the chat so we can edit out your contribution. With that, I will hand over the floor to Ioanna to start with your presentation.
Thank you so much, Marily, and thank you everyone for being here. Let me start and immediately share my screen. So hopefully you can all see my screen well now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to talk about data quality and text mining today. As Marily said, it's us here and Marilia as well, and Julia. And Aaron is also here, who's managing the project from Irish Research E-Library side. Just to remind everyone that on February 13th is the next session. We're going to upload these slides to the website and Zenodo, so you'll be able to see the link to register. We will also be joined by Killian Joy and Chris Lafnane. Hope I said it correct, from the National Open Access Repositories Project. So we'll be able to see how these two projects align and how institutions and the repositories can make sure that all the information is visible. This has implications, of course, at the national level for funders and so on. So please join us at the next meeting. The outline for today's talk is the following. First, we're going to briefly talk about the methodological principles of the Monitor, and then Claudio is going to take us through the data backbone, which is the OpenAir graph, and we will explain how it is constructed at kind of a high level, but enough to understand. And then we'll get into the details on how we clean it and make sure that the quality is high. Afterwards, Hari is going to go over some general data quality enhancement functionalities that we have available in the Monitor, most of which we discussed in the last meeting, and some of which we will discuss in the next meeting, but we'll go over them at, have an overview. And then he will get into the details on how we do text mining for funders and what does this mean about being able to track research outcomes that are funded and their impact. Then we're not going to go through it, but I have the slides for you here. We're going to very briefly pass through some recommendations that we came up with when we're doing the Monitor. And just to briefly mention that all the data that is in the Monitor can also be downloaded in Zenodo, where we provide the monthly updates there as well. So if you go to Zenodo, you can write National Open Access Monitor project, and then you will see all the datasets. If you have any questions, any concern, please let us know, and there will be a Q&A session at the end. But if something is terribly wrong, let us know before. Okay, in case we have any newcomers here, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but just to say that this is the address where you can find the Monitor. The main idea here was to provide transparent and comprehensive insights into the state of open access in Ireland, in order to make decisions about both about open access, but in general about research management as a side thing. So there are 5 dashboards on the monitor, a national one for research performing organization, for research funding organizations, for institutional repositories, and for researchers. So if you fall under any of these categories, or if you are someone who's interested in the national monitor, you can go to the website, and if you need a bit of help on how to navigate it, you can look at the video or the recording from the last sessions where we had a demo. Or of course you can ask us and we'll be happy to do a one-on-one thing. Now, how did we build the Irish monitor? As you see here, there are a lot of things that need to be covered in order to meet the mission that we have. So it's not only about providing dashboards for different organizations, for different types of entities, but also it's about providing enough metadata and breakdowns of interest and information of interest so that what we actually saw is actually useful for decision making and it's not too high level or too low level or whatever. So where we start is our principles. So when we are talking about monitoring, especially at the national level, and these are principles that were also we inherited not only from OpenAir, but by the requirements from North and IREL and the tender that led to this monitor. We need something that is fully open and transparent, so open science for open science. It has to have readiness and timeliness so that it works, and also the decisions made or the insights taken out of it are actually timely and relevant. For that, we also need comprehensive coverage and accuracy, and data quality plays a huge role here. And then at the end, it's engagement and inclusivity, which is one of the reasons that we have these sessions here. And for us, the more engaged you are, the better it is. Okay, I'm going to pass now the floor to Claudio.
Thank you, Joanna, and for the introduction so far. So, what you see in the Irish monitor is essentially information that is a subpart of a wider data set, the open research graph. Basically, it's a slice that is captured by using the information related to the country of provenance of various pieces of information. So what you see, it's a slice of it. In general, the graph, as Joanna said, aims to capture timely and comprehensive coverage of the research products and going, this is a particularity of the graph, going beyond traditional publication, the traditional kind of literature that you find in other similar initiatives. OpenAir, in fact, is pushing a lot to leverage more on other research products beyond literature. It is updated with near monthly pace. In general, every month there is a new release. And we mentioned near monthly. We started to mention near monthly since a year or something because of the various data quality assessment procedures that every month we run to guarantee that there are no regressions on this, on that dimension of the data. And this is made through various processes, data cleaning, deduplication, enrichment, that aims to make it more fruitful to build the dashboards for the various stakeholders, to better support discovery of the various research products. And in this narrative, clearly the text mining and enrichment coming from the text mining plays a crucial role because a lot of added value is found in the publication themselves that is not available originally in the metadata. Might it be a reference to a project? Might it be the categorization through field of science subject classes or sustainable development goals. Just like the need to disambiguate the contents. Because if good coverage of the best coverage could be achieved by being super inclusive in the selection of the data sources, this comes at a cost and is a duplication of information. So it's important to recognize that the same scientific contribution is provided maybe by Crossref and by a number of repositories. Still, again, under the hood, the whole infrastructure is operated by one of the historical opener partners that is affiliated with the University of Warsaw in Poland, where IT practices are the norm for them. So we collaborate with them since 15 years now, and we've been going through quite of announcements since the beginning. Can we go to the next slide, Joanna, please? Thanks. So again, the graph. We call it graph because in the end, it's a collection of nodes and relationships among these nodes. Here, the picture resembles a very high level view of the data model that includes only the main entities. Persons are now becoming a first level citizen in the graph. We are finalizing still some things in the beta environment, but they are already associated with ORCID. So in this sense, they can be considered first level citizens. So some numbers since December last year. We've wrapped up 2024 with a significant increase on various dimensions, data dimensions, resulting from efforts that span on various fronts, from the engagement of the individual content providers, from the refinement of data extraction techniques. So funding now has 3.5 million individual grants from 155 funders. And thanks to the data mapping procedures and thanks to the text mining, we have now nearly 5 million of research products related to at least one grant or one funder. And this is a peculiarity of OpenAir. This level of coverage with respect to the funding information, maybe Harry can confirm later. I haven't found it in other similar initiatives, so this is quite important achievement. Likewise, affiliation information. So linking, we intend it as linking between our research products. One of the author is, at least one of the authors is affiliated with a research institution and a research organization. Here we also increased substantially the amount of publications that are related with at least one RPO, and the bare number of affiliation links, of course. In the last year, the field of science classes were introduced for 77 million publications, and the amount of citations among publications is now over 2 billions. These numbers allow for various usages of the data that we have in the graph. Some of these are already there, like citation counts, like traditional impact measures. Others are still being cooked, let's say, and will surely find a practical use in the next year. So numbers just to impress, but just to give an understanding that the numbers here are important. Under the hood, there is a big data infrastructure. And in the next slide, I'm going to give an overview of the various stages. So on the far left, there is what we call the metadata aggregation system. It includes various kinds of sources that regularly are collected. More or less every week there is a pass over each of them. Some particular ones, like the biggest ones that do not provide, for example, incremental harvesting, are instead aggregated on a less regular pace, like monthly. But the thing is, every month we take a picture of the space of the aggregated contents that is then processed along this pipeline. So the aggregation is just the first stage. In parallel, also the full texts for the open access publications are gathered that supports the mining processes. Harry will detail better these aspects later, so I'm not going to spend many words here. But in general, the kind of enrichments that come in the graph are essentially of two categories. Some of them complete the metadata with links or properties to enrich the metadata, the bibliographic record coming from the full text. Other kind of enrichments instead come from the topology of the graph itself. An example for this is the supplementary material, for example, that can be associated with a publication. Basically, we can traverse the graph to derive information. Maybe if the supplementary material is lacking, is poor of metadata, so it has limited discoverability capabilities, we can move pieces of information from the publication to the supplementary material. And this kind of game that leverages on graph traversal approaches can be declined also in other cases, as long as there is a proper context surrounding any of the edges, any of the nodes in the graph, thanks to the edges. So the process continues by running the deduplication processes that I'm going to detail in the next slide. Goes on with the enrichment phase that leverages on the graph topology. And instead, in the finalization stage, it's where essentially we stop to take a look at what happened to the data that we are building. And here we have established a set of internal protocols to validate the data before rolling it out. And I can tell that it happens that that's a crucial phase that often allows to spot issues in the data that might depend on how OpenAI aggregates the content, on how the pipeline itself is implemented, unfortunately, things that happen. But are things that tend to might delay the release of the data. I'm saying this not as a justification, but also because being open air, among many things, but essentially is an aggregation system, the quality of the content it delivers depend for a large extent on the quality of the input data. So the quality of the inputs sets the baseline for the quality of the data that OpenAI can produce. So it can compensate integrating pieces of information, but to some extent. Eventually, so once these checks are passed, the data is published through various channels. Might it be the Explore portal, the various monitor portals. The data becomes available to the public APIs, and the data sets, selection of data sets is published on Zenodo. The complete version of the graph is deposited on Zenodo every 6 months. And that's it, I think. Can we go to the next slide, please? So brief words about data disambiguation. So as I was mentioning, completeness in the selection of the sources comes at a cost. Potentially, all the records aggregated in the graph might come from multiple sources, and this is quite typical nowadays for literature. In fact, it's often the case that the post-print version comes from the publisher and from an institutional repository or in Zenodo, we find the preprint of the same manuscript. Why OpenAI wants to disambiguate them? Because for statistical purposes, it's important not to double count them. While at the same time, it's important to keep track of the original provenances. So the way the data is organized allows to maintain the references to the original sources with the original metadata fields, but considering the outcome of disambiguation as a single entity in the graph. Then, here I listed the type of entities that are subject to disambiguation in the graph, namely data sources, organizations, RPOs, and research products. They are ordered in order of growing magnitude of the data, which drives somehow the kind of things we can do to run this disambiguation process. For data sources, the task is semi-manual because the volume of data is considerably, let's say, low. Here we get feedback via the content aggregation team, and it happens that the same source maybe is available both in OpenDoor and in fair sharing or in R3 data. And the process is driven by fields like the data source name, the official name, the website URL, the ISSNs, this information, or whenever they are available, of course, persistent identifiers that sometimes are available across various different registries. For organizations, the data volume grows to more or less 1 million distinct records, but it's very prominent. There are a lot of duplicates for organizations, also because of the fact that many providers funding registries that deliver project and grant information to OpenAI provide the members of consortium participating in projects without any sort of identifier. So they are just strings. But they do deliver an added value because the participation to that project is only available from that piece of information. So it's important to reconcile and try to disambiguate this set of organizational references. Here, provided that the volume of data is not that much, OpenAI introduced this platform named OpenOrgs that supports data curators in the disambiguation task. In fact, here the approach is hybrid. Data curators receives disambiguation suggestions by an algorithm, and they are entitled to either accept or reject them. Instead, finally, for research products, the volume of the data is so large that the process is fully automated, and the kind of intervention from human beings is limited to the help desk ticketing, where we can blacklist essentially to resolve false positives or to put together records that were not spotted as duplicates by the algorithm in an automatic way. Finally, there is a number of normalization techniques that are applied to data dimensions that are important to leverage on, namely licenses, countries, or languages. And it's important to have a coherent view on this information. And I think this slide concludes my contribution for this part. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So here I leave the floor to Harry to move on with quality announcements.
Thank you, Claudio. Yes, I will continue to describe the data quality enhancements functionality. So we're back in the pipeline, and I'll just remind you what we presented in the first Open Insight session. So there we showed how it was focused more on the user feedback part down there at the bottom. So we talked about linking, where any logged in user can use to associate their publications to the different projects or organizations. And we talked about researchers, how they can link their ORCID profiles, and how research performing organizations can help with deduplication via the OpenORGS service. In this session, we'll focus more on the custom text mining for RFOs, which is after aggregation in the enrichment by mining step. And in the next one, we'll talk about repository managers and how to register with provide. So this will be for next time. So Joanna, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So in general, in OpenAIRE, there's a lot of enrichment that happens via text mining, and we have a number of text mining modules. So for example, there's affiliation matching, which matches affiliations from documents with the OpenAIRE organization database. There is funding identification, which is more important for what which is also important for what we're discussing here. So we text mine publication full text to identify acknowledged funding. Acknowledged concepts extraction. So from the funding, then we can identify the grants, and there's other information that OpenAIRE mines, patterns, by entities, custom concepts, data sets. There's a lot that is not listed here. Then there is also, we do metadata extraction from the PDFs that are aggregated. We use a system called Sermine, which extracts the plain text, which is fed to the text mining applications, and also metadata, titles, authors, affiliations, in order to enrich the graph. Claudia also mentioned there is the fields of science classification. This is an NLP-based system for classifying publications into the FOS classes up to level 3. And there is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals classification, which helps pinpoint contributions to global challenges. Specific now for the Iris monitor, in order for the text mine to work, obviously it needs the PDFs for it to mine. So just to give you an idea of what has been aggregated for Ireland at the moment, almost 40% of the peer-reviewed open access publications are accessible in the graph. And this keeps improving because it's a continuous process of aggregating PDFs as we find them. Yeah, thank you, Anna. So now I'm going to talk about the research funding organizations and how they're represented in the graph, because this affects the quality of their dashboards in the Irish Monitor. So there's two avenues of representation, the one on the left and the right. I'll first start on the right, actually, because this is the recommended way of joining. So this is joining OpenAIRE as funders have always joined OpenAIRE in the past. So they will go through this link which says funders how to join OpenAIRE, and they will go where a stage they discuss their needs with us, and they provide us their funding data. So this is project metadata, which could be in its basic form just a list of the grant ID numbers and titles, just very simple metadata. Or it could be more information that is useful for enriching the quality of the graph and the dashboards. So what OpenAIRE does with that data, it integrates them in OpenAIRE and develops a tailored text mining module, which scans the PDFs of the publications, the full text, all sections basically, and looks for to create links to acknowledge to the funding. So, and this is at the project level. So because we have the project metadata, we're able to link to specific projects. So we can say that this article is funded by these 2 projects from those funders. And this is represented well in the graph because projects are a main entity of the graph nodes. There's a meticulous curation process. We provide feedback to the funder of what we found in order for them to agree if this, that we've managed to capture everything. And this is a process we've been doing for many years now. So and our accuracy is very high, more than 99%. What that does is it ensures a comprehensive presence with project level granularity. And it guarantees the precision of the incorporated data because we go through all these iterations. On the left now, you see is how funders that have not provided the project data are represented in the graph. So we go through Open Funder Registry, and if we find their projects there, some funders do register their projects there, but there are very few, and none from Ireland that actually have their project data. So instead, we just add the funder, and then we are able to link to the metadata that we get the publications to the funder, but it stays there at the funder level. So we cannot go and provide statistics for the projects. The quality is also not guaranteed because it comes from metadata that comes from our sources. It's common many times to see mistakes from things that come, say, from Crossref. So there's no curation there. What we can do sometimes, and I'll show that for one of the funders, is to enhance this by creating a mining module called unidentified project mining. So although we don't have the projects, we can actually try and find the acknowledgement for the funder and link to the funder. So let me, can you go to the next slide, please, Joanna? So let's see for the Irish Monitor. Okay, so here, and press one button more. So I'll focus on the Science Foundation Ireland. Okay, so these are the RFOs, the top ones based on the number of publications. So starting from Science Foundation Ireland, which is the largest one, the SFI has joined OpenAIRE since 2015. They're one of the first funders that joined OpenAIRE way back. So their project, they're registered with OpenAIRE, and their project metadata is provided to OpenAIRE. Now, because the project data is also open data, which you can find in this website, OpenAIRE has an agreement to get the data from there and integrate them in OpenAIRE. So at the moment, we have 6,922 projects. Previous quarter was 6,824, and about 21K of publications. So if we go to the next slide. So now we come to Irish Research Council, and the next slide, please. So here we don't have the project data provided yet. So, but because IRC is a large funder, we wanted to include to do something better than just what we call it from metadata. So we created the unidentified project text mining module. So this links to at the funder level, and at the moment we have the 12.6K publications. So what were we doing? Looking at publications for statements like was funded by the Irish Research Council. You can see that the acknowledgements usually acknowledge a grant number, but because we don't have the database, we cannot link it in the graph. So instead, we link it to the Irish Research Council. If we had the actual project data, then the mining will be perfect because they're very well structured. The granted numbers are better than the ECs, for example, which is just a bunch of numbers and can be confused with other numbers. And anyway, by doing that, we doubled the coverage of RC publications that we got just from metadata, from aggregating from other repositories. So if we go to the next slide. Now we have the Health Research Board, and the next, please. Okay, so here, Health Research Board and OpenAIRE are currently signing a data processing agreement. It has been signed by OpenAIRE, and now it's in the process of being signed from HRB. So they will provide the project data, and it will be like SFI. So we will have complete and accurate data. At the moment, though, while this process was going on, we continued with the unidentified project approach, and we identified 9.3K publications in the current graph. We were very careful here to eliminate links to other RFOs with similar names, because when you look searching for something like Health Research Board, there are many health research boards, in all these countries. Here are some examples that you can see. So we eliminated all these cases, so we were careful to do that. And here's, I will say also that if we have the project metadata, it's very easy to create a text mining module for a funder in about a week. If we don't, and the funder name is not very unique, we have to do everything, manually check that we're not getting false positives. So it's a process that takes a while. This took more than a month to be sure. We kept finding rare cases that we want to eliminate, like the Health Research Board of Zambia, for example. And we've noticed that when we rely on data that comes, say, from Crossref, from publishers even, because they use automatic kind of text mining methods, which are not curated because they want to cover everything that they get, we get errors from them too. So these errors could come in, whereas with OpenAir, these are eliminated. So in our tests, we increased the precision to 99%. It took 2 development sprints and a lot of manual curation of the results. And it almost doubled the number of publications that we were getting before and reduced the errors. So let me give you an example for the health research. Here is a publication you can find in the Irish board, which this is a screenshot from previously, before the funding mining was completed for HRB. So you can see down there at the bottom, it says funded by UKRI and I think IRC. Can you press one button more? Yeah. So, but if you look at the PDF, it's also funded by the Health Research Board. Can you press one more to give an example of the text you can find in? Okay, so this is the funding statement where you can see it says UK Research and Innovation Economic Social. So it comes, it has other funders, it has the Irish Research Council a bit further down, but it also mentions the Health Research Board, which is the highlighted text. And remember, the mining also looks at the context, so it makes sure that when it finds a reference, it's about funding. Here's another reference further below about competing interests. But again, it talks about financial support from the Health Research Board. So this should be linked to Health Research Board. So after the mining, we go to the next slide. So this is how it is now, a screenshot from yesterday. So you will see down there on the funding, HRB is there added. And if you click on the HRB, so that's press one button, yeah, you will see the information there that the project is funded by the Health Research Board. Now, you will not see though the project because at the moment we haven't integrated the project, but this is coming. So, but when the project is integrated, we will have the project level information. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so the data quality improvements, they're all done in a kind of iterative process that needs to be validated. So that's why we have a sandbox, which is like a beta environment, which is used for development, and RPO and RFO managers have access to it only. So you have to be a manager. And there you can see any pre-release version of the graph. First, the data is shown there to make sure that there's nothing odd happening. Any new functionalities are added first there before they go into production, and any new indicators that we might be developing. So the next slide, please. Okay, so this is a summary of what was said before by for data quality, including some of the stuff that Claudia said. So we talked about deduplication, enrichment, and cleaning in OpenAir. So there's a lot of processes for that. And you can also find the deduplication process. It's covered in the graph documentation. We talked also about disaggregation of journals, publishers, and licenses. So what is the additional things that can be done to enrich the quality of the graph for the Irish monitor? Well, for RFOs, for RPOs, is the deduplication via OpenOrgs. So we encourage the managers to join OpenOrgs and help with the deduplication of the organizations. Many RPOs have affiliated, they have, there's parents and child, there's many things that need to be linked together. There's RFOs, which, as I said here, it's important to provide funding data for the custom text mining because this improves dramatically the quality of the data. It's at the project level, and it up to doubles the data that can be represented. Repositories can register with OpenAir provides so the data reaches OpenAir, and researchers can claim the research outputs. And there's also the linking functionality, which is available to all. So somebody can go and add their specific paper if they know that it's funded by some specific funder and it hasn't been included already. So I think that's all from me now.
Thank you, Harry. I can keep going. Okay, so one thing I wanted to say, that was the subtext of what Harry was saying, is that for a lot of the modules for text mining and inference, we also rely on other metadata such as acknowledgements, abstracts, and so on. Since the full text is only available for open access publications, of course, we don't extract information only for the open access stuff. Okay, now when we launched the monitor, we also provided a report, a baseline analysis and a metadata analysis of the state of Ireland, so how it was last year. There were a few things that we noticed, such as the following. So first of all, there were some metadata elements not regularly shared. Now, this is not truly true only for Ireland. It's true in general. So that these are not exposed by repositories, but also shared by users. So we have the date of deposit to repository. Now, this is something very important, because if you want to talk about immediate open access and compliance with Plan S, ideally we would want this. The second is, if the publication is the version of record or the author accepted manuscript or a preprint. So in general, on occasion, preprints are identified, but not always. And this really messes with compliance. Also, the access rights at the time of deposit, something that is also important for compliance with Plan S or different funder mandates. Whether an article is peer-reviewed or not, we use algorithms to estimate this, but it would be nice to know directly the corresponding author. So there is some text mining going on to identify this. But we have found that the articles that mention the word corresponding or correspondence are actually quite few. And also, the algorithms are picking up a lot of wrong names in other platforms that share that data. So it's something that ideally would be required for someone to share as a separate metadata element. And then the affiliation and proper funding acknowledgement, that wasn't so much of an issue in the particular case, but we should always be careful about that. And then there are a lot of metadata elements that are in general dirty, such as the affiliations, having several versions, even in the same year of a university name, for example, the name of the publisher, the journal, the license, URLs, and so on. So a lot of the times, URLs are provided, and since we have the PDF aggregation system that goes and resolves the URL and see what type of file is available there and so on, it's about 30 or 40% of the time on average that the URLs lead to nothing. So it is important for whoever is collecting the data or whoever is training people to give them metadata or collecting and so on, that there are some sort of, let's say, insurance procedures there so that we make sure that things are clean and deduplicated and so on. Licenses are a bit difficult to interpret because if we're not talking about standard CC licenses, then it's not so easy to map exactly the restriction level. So in terms of monitoring and compliance, this is kind of an issue. So we need some sort of normalization here. And then, as we said, funding and output links, I think Harry covered this. So we added here, but I want to leave some time for discussion, so I'm going to stop talking now. But the presentation has some suggested recommendations and solutions as we had them in the report that we wrote. Of course, these are open for suggestions, and these were kind of our first thoughts. So I think you heard enough from us. Are there any questions, comments, anything you'd like to discuss?
May I ask a question, please? Hi, Anna, and thank you for the presentation. So I work in the transport space, and I just had a look at the fields of science classifications, and I see that you have one for civil engineering, but there isn't one for transport.
For the fields of science, you said.
Yeah.
Let me. Okay, so does transport normally have its own field, or would you say that is kind of cross-disciplinary?
I don't know. So this isn't a space that I know a lot about.
Okay.
I'm point on this project for my organization in the short to medium term. So I just saw, you know, the fields of science number 2 is engineering and technology, and 0201 is civil engineering, and for me that's very high level.
Yeah, I see that there is transportation and highway engineering below civil engineering. I'm looking at the classification, although I'm not the one that developed this, so I can't really.
That's fine. Maybe I'm not looking at a very thorough list, but yeah, highway and transportation, it's great if those options are in there.
Yeah, so we have to look at that. That should be level.
So
Okay,
basically, the classification, if I can answer, so Joanna, the classification is based on the Frascati classification. But if you would like to have, to prefer something deeper for transport, let us know and we will try to find some solution.
So actually we have done a project on transport. So if you can shoot us a message through the contact us or send us here in a private message your email, we can tell you a little bit under what field you can find transport stuff.
Please, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it was the Topos project, right? Open Science Observatory for Transport Research. So there is knowledge we can use from there to enhance, you know, what you want.
Exactly. Any other questions, comments?
Hi, this is Jennifer Brennan from the Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications here. I do have one question. It just relates to Harry's presentation. So one of the agencies, the funding agency that's linked to my department is the Environment Protection Agency. And obviously that's exactly the same name as the US Environment Protection Agency. So I haven't looked at the publications that are attributed to the EPA in the National Open Access Monitor for quite a while. But I do remember that I saw some of them that appeared to be, you know, the US had funded it. I couldn't see any connection to Ireland, no Irish authors, no.
And that is quite likely because, sorry to interrupt, but because there is no mining developed for EPA at the moment. So if you can provide us your project data, then that will be fixed very easily. Because it's something I forgot to mention, like the fourth funder here is IRL. And I should mention that, you know, why was there no mining for IRL? Well, there was two things. Initially, we got the data from, you know, from the sources we aggregated, and we found many mistakes for IRL. And IRL decided to disable whatever was coming, you know, from Crossref, because they have very good linking that was provided to OpenAIRE from OpenAPC. So the data is very clean and it comes directly in. So there was no need to develop something else for that. But that gave us the experience that in many cases, things that come from even from publishers are kind of automatically classified, and there's these errors that you mentioned about. This will be solved if we, I mean, we can try the unidentified text mining if you want, but it's ideal. It takes less effort from both parts in the sense to, if we have the project data, then we can very easily, you know, clean that data.
That's great. I'll pass that information on to my colleagues in the Environmental Protection Agency.
Great.
And just, I don't know if you're aware, but you were mentioning about Science Foundation Ireland and the Irish Research Council. They are now the one organisation. They merged last year. So I guess there's a bit of work to be done there for you guys to push it all together.
Again, this will be through open orgs and things. Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question as well. Hello, everyone. My name is Killian Joy from the University of Galway. Now, I'm talking the next talk about the repository side. So, so we are leading the project to strengthen online the network of repositories in Ireland. And we're well aware there are some issues at the repository level, and we have the reports so we can identify certain fields. And we're trying to improve the data quality at the source level of the open repositories at the institution. But one of the challenges, which I'll be talking about the next talk, but I just wanted to surface or get some of your ideas because I haven't spoken to some people on the call here. I think what the community here is asking for is a bit more detail of exactly where the issues are, because we can identify, let's say, we know there are issues, for example, in licensing, and we know that one repository might have 13, 14, 20,000 records, and we know that maybe a certain percentage of those have issues. But where it kind of breaks down is that the repository manager finds it difficult to specifically highlight the items that have those issues or what those issues might exactly be. Now, you would think that they would have control and understand their data, but like that's not always the case. So what we're looking for is extra tools or extra ways that go beyond what the validator, the OpenAir validator, gives us, and maybe even what the monitor gives us. So this is kind of an open question, really, about how do we get the exact detail of the issues so we can actually go off and try and solve them. I'm hoping somebody from OpenAir would be like, this is the solution. Well, I do look in the app. Go on.
No, maybe Claudio can say something. It's Leonidas would have been the person to be, but he's traveling today. He's in a workshop.
Yes,
because
I can try to.
Okay.
Let's try. I'd like to understand if you're on the same page. First of all,
Yes.
Cillian, you mentioned that you are aware of the OpenAir validator, because that was my first thought, based on what you said. I know the validator allows to pinpoint exactly, precisely in individual metadata records, aspects that break some validation rules, that checks compliance with the OpenAir guidelines. And you get a detailed report on this. I can tell that one of the activities that OpenAir is working on is more extensive use of these validation outputs, namely an integration with another OpenAir service, the OpenAir Broker, that allows to get added value information back into the repositories. There is an integration that is already available in the DSpace platform that integrates with the OpenAir Broker API. And the gap that we are starting to work, but this is a quite preliminary work at the moment, I must say, is a connection between the validator and the broker. So what we plan to do is to run the validation on a continuous way every time OpenAir gathers the metadata from the repositories, and to model these validation reports as new warning topics in the broker. So the idea is to have a continuous monitoring on quality aspects of the metadata records, so that users through OpenAir Provide can access these validation reports, well, I'd say for free, without needing to do any action, because the OpenAir aggregation system will take care to run the validation and make these validation reports always update, and also to monitor over time how the compliance evolves. This is the rough idea.
Okay, I think I understand now. For the Provide validator, it's probably been a year, honestly, since I've looked closely. Has there been recent enough updates that provide extra functionality?
I cannot respond to this.
Perfect.
But,
yeah, that's okay.
I have another meeting on the team that manages Provide, starting in 4 minutes. So I'd
Let's
like also
discuss
to
this
hear about
in February. It's, in the next thing. So if there's something that's urgent, we can always answer by email.
Definitely. No, like I suppose we've gone at this a couple of times. It always the gap always seems to fall at the flat. And I'm just trying to understand, how can we can kind of understand each other. But yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, in that case, I would like to thank everyone for joining us. Oh, just 3 minutes before we end, so great. Also, please do let us know if you have, if there are other topics that you would rather see in this course. If you go to the platform, there's a help button following you everywhere like a stalker. And if you click on it, you can write us a message directly. So thank you so much. We will upload the slides and the recording on the Monitor website, and you'll be able to see them there. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.